On this episode of the Klamath Armory Wrestling Podcast, we travel back to December 1935. Will fan favorite Pete Belcastro be the one to stop the reign of terror that has been brought to Klamath Falls by the dastardly Ken Hollis? You're about to find out. Welcome to the Klamath Armory Wrestling Podcast, the podcast that covers the history of pro wrestling at the Klamath Armory and Auditorium in Klamath Falls, Oregon. My name is Grant Bachoco. And now, on to the show. Episode 3, December 1935. The Evening Herald finished out the last week of November 1935, building up the upcoming match between Pete Belcastro and Ken Hollis that would happen at the Armory on Tuesday, December 3rd. Not staying neutral, the paper called Hollis unpopular and pointed out his roughness and cheating ways. The paper stated that promoter Mac Lillard had assigned Pete Belcastro to take care of Hollis with his speed, stamina, and drop kicks. Hollis and Belcastro would main event the December 3rd card, and the paper stated that though Belcastro is fast and strong, he too can forget science and enter the spirit of a free-for-all, promising that their encounter would be a fight for sure. The undercard for December 3rd would feature Leslie Wolfe meeting Frankie Peck. Both Wolfe and Peck are 2-0 in matches at the Armory, and the paper says both are clean, fast, and scientific. Their meeting should be one of the most interesting of the program. It's also noted that they would be wrestling in the Australian round rules system. In the opening match, popular Toots Estes would face Rex Mobley. Estes is lauded for possessing great speed. Mobley is noted for his strongman stunts, which promises to be a fun clash of styles. On the day of the matches, the Evening Herald speculated that whether he wins or loses, Pete Belcastro is in for a rough match against Ken Hollis. Hollis was ready to fight the crowd last week, and he did at one point. The paper runs down Ken Hollis's moveset: a blow to the head, a knee to his opponent's stomach, and a well-aimed kick. The paper adds, "It wasn't wrestling, but it was enough stuff." Belcastro, for his part, tells the paper he has no fear. He plans to use speed and drop kicks to counter Hollis's attacks. In the opening match that night, Toots Estes used a body press in the second round to get the first fall on Rex Mobley. Mobley fired back in the third and fourth rounds, picking up a fall in the fourth with a backwards body slam. Mobley picked up his second fall and took home the match in the fifth round with an arm stretch. In the middle match, Les Wolfe picked up the first fall in the second round with what the paper called an octopus hold in 1 minute and 32 seconds after a batch of rolling headlocks. Frankie Peck picked up the second fall in the third round after 3 minutes and 7 seconds with a full Nelson. The fourth round saw Les Wolfe constantly being flummoxed by Frankie Peck's wrist locks. In the fifth round, Wolfe kept his wrists free of Peck and was able to once again lock Peck in the octopus hold and pick up the third fall and the victory. The paper noted that this match was the best wrestled match of the night. Leslie Wolfe was now undefeated in 3 straight matches at the Armory. Then it was time for the main event, as Pete Belcastro stepped into the ring with Ken Hollis. Pete Belcastro came out of the gate with his speed, giving Hollis little chance to start with his roughness. After trying to avoid Belcastro for several minutes, Hollis fell victim to not 1, but 4 of the junior heavyweight champion's drop kicks, each one driving Hollis back down to the mat as quickly as he could stand up. After the fourth one, Hollis didn't get up, and Pete Belcastro won the first fall in 2 minutes and 34 seconds. The loss of the fall didn't sit well with Ken Hollis, who, learning Belcastro's ways, was able to reverse a move and found an opening to start punching and slugging his opponent in his usual manner. Hollis hit Belcastro with a pile driver and picked up a fall in 7 minutes and 34 seconds. Tied at a fall apiece, Belcastro and Hollis went at each other, but the hero Belcastro was starting to show signs of being knocked silly by all of Hollis's blows. Pete Belcastro saw his opening and went for a dropkick, but the move missed and Belcastro crashed to the mat and bounced through the ropes and did a backward dive on his head to the armory floor. Hollis dragged Belcastro back in and began wailing away on him before referee Ray Frisbee even realized Belcastro was unconscious. Frisbee called the match and awarded the final fall via knockout to Ken Hollis. Ken Hollis had beaten Pete Belcastro. One can only imagine the grief the Armory fans gave Hollis as he left the ring that night. Likely, Hollis gave some of that grief back. On December 5th, the Evening Herald announced Ken Hollis's next victim, Frankie Peck. The paper ran a full-body photo of Peck with the caption letting fans know that Frankie Peck had issued a challenge for Ken Hollis at the next Klamath Armory card. Hollis, who had moved on to Sacramento, California to wrestle, sent word to promoter Mac Lillard that he was agreeable to the match, so it was signed. The paper noted that Peck, a former boxer, could use his punching ability against the Arkansas Tornado. The paper goes on to say, normally a clean grappler, Peck says he will have no reluctance in getting rough with a wrestler of Hollis's type. Other matches signed for the December 10th card at the Armory were announced as pitting Hollis's two past opponents, Les WOlfe and Pete Belcastro, against each other, and Toots Estes and Rex Mobley in a return bout in the opener. A brief article on Friday, December 6th mentioned that Frankie Peck was deep into training for the match against Ken Hollis and commented that he was generally unalarmed by the ferocity of Hollis's tactics. The article also mentioned that in the match between Les WOlfe and Pete Belcastro, it'd be a battle of Wolfe's figure four scissors and Belcastro's drop kicks. A second article on the sports page ran down wrestling results from the rest of the country, including Dano O'Mahony beating Jack Donovan in Washington, Vincent Lopez beating Joe Savoldi in Los Angeles, and Man Mountain Dean beating Ernie Dusek in St. Louis. On Saturday, December 7th, the Evening Herald ran a full body shot of Ken Hollis, calling him a bad man from Arkansas. The accompanying article said Hollis was deeply hated by the Armory crowds, and he will meet Peck in the main event Tuesday night. It then went on to recap Hollis's and Peck's exploits from the previous weeks of Armory action. On Monday, December 9th, Klamath Falls got the news that the matches on December 10th at the Armory would be the last wrestling event of the year. Mac Lillard was reported to have decided to shut down operations through the Christmas and New Year period. The article goes on to promote the Hollis-Peck encounter, predicting it would be one of the outstanding clashes of the year. The day of the event, the paper ran down the card again, giving that last-minute push for fans to buy tickets. It also announced that the two preliminary matches, Pete Belcastro versus Leslie WOlfe and Toots Estes versus Rex Mobley, would be fought under the Australian round system. At the Armory that night, Rex Mobley was able to defeat Toots Estes in the first fall of their match using a Boston Crab. Mobley picked up the second fall with a body press and won the match. In the mid-card match, Pete Belcastro picked up the first fall in the third round with two smart drop kicks, according to the paper. WOlfe was on the verge of victory several times by locking Belcastro in a few Indian deathlocks in the fourth round, but Belcastro was saved by the bell right when it looked like he would submit. Les WOlfe evened things up in the fifth round with an octopus hold, but then the time expired, making the end of the match a draw between the two. In the main event between Frankie Peck and Ken Hollis, Peck wanted a real wrestling match. The paper said, giving his opponent every chance to wrestle cleanly, Peck was pushed and punched around the ring for the first 10 minutes of the bout. Peck finally had enough and clamped a vicious head scissors to gain the first fall in 10 minutes and 47 seconds. Hollis was cut open over the eye as a result. Hollis started the next fall complaining to the referee about Peck, but Ray Frisbee was not swayed. Seeing no choice but to fight, Hollis did and attacked Peck with a series of hard body slams and a Boston Crab to win the second fall in 3 minutes and 52 seconds. Peck asked for an extra 5 minutes rest between the falls, but that request was not granted. Peck summoned up all his recuperative powers and pinned Hollis for the third fall with a backward body slam off the ropes in 1 minute and 48 seconds. Frankie Peck had done it. He beat Ken Hollis in the final match of the year. But wait. On Thursday, December 12th, the Evening Herald ran a picture of a wrestler wearing a martial arts gi. The blurb under the picture read, "This is Shinuchi Shikuma, 205 pounds from Japan, who will meet Frankie Peck from San Francisco in a 1-hour match at the Armory next Tuesday. It would seem that Mac Lillard changed his mind and there would be another week of wrestling in Klamath Falls after all. No information is given about Lillard's reversal on running another week. The blurb goes on to call Shikuma one of the outstanding jiu-jitsu stars of his country. Shinuchi Shikuma was born in Hawaii in 1905. His first recorded professional match was a win over Einar Lindbergh in Honolulu on December 3, 1934. He doesn't have any titles to his name, according to WrestlingData.com, but they do note that he wrestled masked at times as Killa Shikuma. His last recorded match took place in June 1940 in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, where he teamed up in a losing effort with Jerry Monahan in a 2-on-1 handicap match against Maurice Tillet, the French Angel. The article also announced that Rex Mobley would face Ken Hollis and Leslie Wolfe would face off against everyone's favorite Mean Marine, the returning Bob Kenaston. The next day, the Evening Herald told fans a bit more of what to expect from Shinuchi Shikuma. The article said that Frankie Peck may have trouble with the Japanese wrestler due to his size, 200 pounds and 6 feet 1 inches tall. They credit him as a jiu-jitsu champion and mention that he wrestles barefoot and his feet are very special in size. Not quite sure what that means. Elsewhere in the article, Ken Hollis is called a ruffian extraordinaire and mentions that Bob Kenaston has not wrestled in Klamath Falls in many weeks, but his roughness has not been forgotten. The article ends saying that the card on December 17th will be the final one for the 1935 season. For real this time. Saturday's paper made note that Frankie Peck had spent all week training to build a defense for the jiu-jitsu fighting style of Shinuchi Shikuma. And in an interesting twist, it stated that at the start of the Peck-Shikuma match, a coin will be flipped to determine which method of wrestling, jiu-jitsu or catch-as-catch-can, will be used in the opening fall. The other style will be used in the second fall. If the match should go to a third fall, the style would be determined by the wrestler who had previously upset his rival in the shortest amount of time. On Monday, the paper ran a headshot of Shinuchi Shikuma, noting that he was a black belt in wrestling the jiu-jitsu style. A separate article said that Shikuma was recognized as one of the first 5 jiu-jitsu grapplers in Japan. The article says that Frankie Peck pointed out some of the features of Japanese wrestling to the always unnamed reporter. Peck said that the grapplers will wear canvas jackets during the match because, as the paper points out, jiu-jitsu is not particularly effective on the nude body. The point of a jiu-jitsu wrestling match, according to the article, is that the victor must either render his opponent unconscious or force him to give up. The winner then must revive any unconscious opponent himself. In Japan, a student must first learn to revive his competitor before he is permitted to go on wrestling, the article states, adding, Frankie Peck studied the jiu-jitsu style on his last trip to Japan. The only other thing of note in Monday's paper was that only the first match between Leslie Wolfe and Bob Kenaston would be wrestled under the Australian rounds system. In the Tuesday, December 17, 1935 edition of the Evening Herald, the article about the card that night at the Klamath Armory led with the headline, Matt's Season Ends Tonight. Promoter Mac Lillard, the article stated, is planning to leave shortly on a vacation trip to the Southwest and will not resume promoting at the Klamath Armory until Tuesday, January 7, 1936. The rest of the article runs down the previously announced card in a last-ditch push to get fans in the doors. Leslie Wolfe won the first fall of the Australian Rounds Rules opener by trapping Bob Kenaston in the figure 4 scissors in the first round. The two grappled competitively through the third round, and it was an octopus hold in the fourth round that gave Les Wolfe the victory. Next up was the match between Ken Hollis and Rex Mobley, which the paper described as a rough-and-tumble backstreet exhibition that was more appropriate for a back alley than an arena. Hollis and Mobley tore into each other with knees, fists, and teeth. Both men took the action outside of the ring several times. Ken Hollis used a pile driver 7 minutes in to pick up the first fall. A body slam a little over 5 minutes later gave him the second fall and the match. After the dust settled from the mid-card brawl, it was time for the main event. Frankie Peck won the coin toss, meaning the first round would be fought under catch-as-catch-can rules. 6 minutes after the opening bell, Peck won the fall, downing Shinuchi Shikuma with a headlock. The second fall would be jiu-jitsu rules, so both Peck and Shikuma donned their jiu-jitsu jackets. Wrestling in his preferred style, Shikuma wasted no time in locking Peck in what the article calls a Japanese variation of an arm stretch, making Peck tap out in 1 minute and 25 seconds. Winning the second fall so quickly gave Shikuma the advantage in the third fall, which would be wrestled under jiu-jitsu rules. Peck used all his knowledge to avoid Shikuma and even locked him in some moves. It was even until about 7 minutes in when Shikuma locked Peck in a stranglehold, forcing Peck to submit before he lost consciousness. The paper called the final match of 1935 outstanding and said that even in defeat, Frankie Peck showed a well-founded knowledge of jiu-jitsu. On Thursday, December 19th, the sports page ran an article with the headline, "Lillard Seeks New Grapplers for Next Month." In the article, we learn of Mac Lillard's travel itinerary. The promoter plans to spend several days in Southern California and then move on to Texas. Mac Lillard's hope along the way is to sign a new string of grapplers for the Klamath Armory card on January 7th. The article points out he's particularly interested in booking Leroy McGurk of Oklahoma, who the paper says is the light heavyweight champion of the world. We also get some updates on a few of the favorites from the past month. Toots Estes is wrestling in Michigan, while Pete Belcastro is wrestling in Los Angeles. WOlfe is said to have left for Texas for the holidays. Frankie Peck, the paper says, is the only one more or less certain to remain in Klamath Falls. The article ends by noting that the annual report of the Boxing Commission will be placed on file soon, and it is expected there will be a generous sum for charity. A second article on the same page gives us some results from Portland. Chief Thundercloud beat Mike Strelick, Reb Russell beat Abe Coleman, and Dr. Nap DeVore beat Hans Schroder. For the better part of the rest of December, there was no mention of wrestling in Klamath Falls, but there would be reports of matches in other places around the country. On Christmas Eve, the paper ran a story with the headline, "Angry Customers Injure Wrestler." Reports out of Detroit, Michigan said that Nongo Singh threw his opponent, Ivan Rasputin, out of the ring 15 minutes into their match. While returning to the ring, Rasputin swiped at Singh, and the crowd surged over the canvas, some with chairs in their hands. Police had to rescue Singh, who went to the hospital with internal injuries. Officers said that although the crowd was responsible for the attack, Rasputin was held as a material witness. With wrestling not taking up so much space on the Evening Herald sports page, other types of articles crept in. The Klamath Kennel Club and Humane Society was given room for their About Dogs column. It was a sad retelling of people coming to the writer, an employee at the Humane Society, with dogs that were sick and which they couldn't afford veterinary care for, or dogs injured by cars or other means. The article's unlisted author solemnly tells all these people that the only thing the Humane Society can do is put the animals down humanely. It's a real uplifting piece for the holiday season. But I think it was a cleverly disguised ad, as the last paragraph says, "Is the Humane Society needed? What do you think these poor animals would say?" You can almost hear Sarah McLachlan playing in the background. Another sports page intruder that caught my eye was the article about the lumber and coal magnate John P. Weyerhaeuser's estate being split up amongst his daughter and 2 sons. My grandfather worked at the Weyerhaeuser lumber mill in Klamath Falls. The article reports that Weyerhaeuser died on May 16, 1935, a week before his 9-year-old grandson George was kidnapped by a gang and released for $200,000 ransom. Again, real heartwarming stories. On Monday, December 30th, the Evening Herald ran a small blurb saying that Mac Lillard was expected back in Klamath Falls in the next few days, and wrestling would resume at the Klamath Armory as scheduled on January 7th, 1936. The paper also teased that the opening card would be announced later that week. And that was the last mention of Klamath Falls wrestling in the Evening Herald for the year 1935. We'll have to see what action happens in January of a brand new year on the next episode of the Klamath Armory Wrestling Podcast. So there you have the end of the year, 1935. Some fun stuff to close out the year. Very surprised that Pete Belcastro lost. I don't look ahead at results or anything like that. So I really literally go week by week. So the results are a surprise to me when they happen. And I thought for sure Pete Belcastro would take care of Ken Hollis, but it's kind of fun that they seem to be building Frankie Peck up. And Frankie Peck, even though he had lost before, was the one to defeat Ken Hollis, and they, that one article mentions that he'll be coming back next year. So it seems that Mac Lillard is putting some stock in Frankie Peck, and we'll see if he's around. I don't know. As I said, I don't look forward, so I don't know if Frankie Peck comes back January 7th. I don't know if Leroy McGurk shows up because, as I said, I don't look ahead. And as we know from the past, sometimes we get name drops that don't wind up showing up in Klamath Falls. It was really fun to see Shinuchi Shikuma come in at the very end and bring sort of a different style. And I really, really love sort of the stipulations for their match, his match against Frankie Peck, which was the catch as catch can or jujitsu combo match. I don't know if that's the official name of what you would call that stipulation, but that's what I just said right there. But a fun match, and it'll be interesting to see if Shikuma shows up again here in Klamath Falls. Looking at the rankings, now here's what I did. I went through and I kind of took out people who have not been active in the recent months. So at the top of the pack is Leslie Wolfe. Leslie Wolfe is 4 wins, 0 losses, and 1 draw. Frankie Peck is right behind him with 3 wins, 2 losses. Pete Belcastro is after him there with 2 wins, 1 losses, and 2 draws. And the Arkansas Tornado, Ken Hollis, has 2 wins, 2 losses, and he is sort of tied with Rex Mobley, who also has 2 wins and 2 losses. Rounding out the rest of the sort of active rankings, Shinuchi Shikuma is 1 win, and poor Toots Estes is way down at the bottom with 1 win, 4 losses, and 1 draw. So lots of fun stuff happening there. I'm excited to see what happens in the new year, and I hope you are digging this podcast. Let me know what you think of it. If there's anything you would like to see different, let me know. I'm trying to post pictures on the episode art for like sort of the main character of the month. And so for this month, it'll be Ken Hollis. But if you'd like to see other things, just let me know. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Klamath Armory Wrestling Podcast. For links to the resources used for this episode and to see the entire rankings for the month, visit klamatharmory.com. This podcast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and made possible thanks to the support of the channel members over at the Solo Promoter YouTube channel. Consider supporting the show by becoming a channel member today. Visit solopromoter.com and click the join button for more information. You can also tell a fellow wrestling fan about the show or leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for your support. The Klamath Armory Wrestling Podcast is copyright 2025 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Pachoco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com